I would recommend that not just go looking for, the great show dog at 8 weeks or something. Look for something, hopefully to start a breeding program and incorporate some soundness in their breeding. Establish a relationship with somebody to meet their goals.
Welcome to the Better Breeder Chronicles, brought to you by Easy Whelp Premium Whelping Boxes. Elevate your breeding program with Easy Whelp. In today's episode, we visit with Grace Fritz of Good Fortune Shar-Peis. Located outside of Kansas City, Kansas, Grace is one of the most esteemed breeders in the Shar-Pei breed. Her highlights include breeding the top winning Shar-Pei of all time, Platinum Grand Champion, Good Fortune, Good and Ready 2. His wins include an astounding 4 National Specialty Best of Breeds, 4 AKC National Championship Best of Breeds, and 4 Westminster Best of Breed wins. He was a multiple-time #1 Shar-Pei in breed and all-breed rankings. He won multiple all-breed Best in Shows and Reserve Best in Shows, as well as a Top Stud Dog Award. Grace has bred many additional National Specialty winners, #1 dogs, and multiple Best in Show winners. She's also been a CSPCA Breeder of the Year. Those who know Grace best describe her dedication to the advancement of the breed as profound. They call her an amazing person, exhibitor, breeder, and judge with great knowledge and experience that she is willing to share with others, and in particular, new people to the sport of dogs. One fellow breeder said you can look in the ring and know if a dog is out of Grace's breeding program because her dogs have a stamp that screams the breed standard. Another breeder said Grace has earned her seat at the table of American Chinese Shar-Pei royalty, and that her dogs continue to influence the pedigrees of top dogs across this country and around the world. Join me now in welcoming the master of good fortune, Grace Fritz. Grace, welcome to the show, and I'm excited for you to share the Good Fortune story with us today. Take us back to the beginning. How did you get started in purebred dogs?
Well, I've always loved dogs, and I had a Saint Bernard growing up who was very important to me, but he not really specific to the Shar-Pei world, but very many Shar-Pei people, especially of my age, we first saw that Life magazine cover. Do you remember that with the Shar-Pei on it? And I was one of those people who saw that and put me on the path to get a dog. At one point, I was in a room with our club, and almost every person, that was how we got into Shar-Pei. So I ended up getting a Shar-Pei. He ended up being a really good obedience dog, but I was hooked on it, and then I started breeding from there. But that was back in the mid '80s.
Can you think, was there an early event that might have set the hook for you on your passion for purebred dogs?
Shar-Pei, I don't know if you're familiar. We did not come into the AKC world until 1994. So prior to that, we had some really large shows. We would have them at hotels all over. And so I had got this Shar-Pei, a little female, and I ended up winning best of breed over 250 dogs, which is, I was hooked from that second on to go right from the top. But Shar-Pei are a little different too. We have a lot of puppy winning because that's when they have a lot of their breed specific, the wrinkles and things like that. But going to that specialty and winning, I was all in at that point.
Tell us about some of your early mentors, the people that really influenced you, during, your first years in the breed. Who were they?
Shar-Pei are a little different than some other breeds in that, of course, it was a new breed to the United States. And so a lot of the people who got the breed did not come from the AKC world. There's still a core group of people that I started with in the mid '80s that, this was our first breed we got going and, became very active in AKC, but that's not how we started out. Marge Calthorpe happened to be from Kansas City. She's a AKC judge and breeder and AKC delegate. And she had Shar-Pei prior to me getting them, and she showed and kind of was helpful in that world. And then I still had friends I made who they long ago got out of Shar-Pei, but they're still in Kansas City and see them and so on. When I got to the AKC world and we started doing shows, I was kind of lucky to hang out with a lot of people who didn't have Shar-Pei but had working breeds. And so that was probably a good venue for me because I learned a lot about structure, movement, and those priorities rather than just breed type and Shar-Pei and so on. So some of those would be Karen McFarland's she had Sammy's, she's in Kansas City. Jan Sigler has Siberian, she's in Kansas City. And those would be two people that I would think I would learn some things from.
Were there any key moments or experiences that you feel significantly shifted or advanced your journey in the Shar-Pei breed?
Well, I think having some wins at the national level early on, made me very interested in continuing. I would say one thing that was pretty significant, Shar-Pei, and we can talk about it later, they have a lot of different illnesses and strengths and weaknesses compared to other dogs. And so maybe about 10 years ago that we started getting some breed specific genetic testing for some of our illnesses and so on. And so that was significant to me and kind of a big shift in my breeding program to
Okay.
incorporate that testing into my breeding.
So, after establishing your vision of what a good fortune Chinese Shar-Pei would look like, what dogs or bloodlines did you use as you progressed towards your vision?
One person I was lucky to know in Shar-Pei was Beth Gray Harper. And she was in Indiana at the time. She had Grayland Acres. But what she did different from anybody else is she had the means to do a really large volume, large scale Shar-Pei breeding. Took excellent care of the dogs, but she did have, many, many dogs at the time, many litters at the time. And she kind of locked in a lot of things that are important to the breed and were really helpful to having nice dogs, like nice straight front legs. A lot of the early Shar-Pei, if you remember them, had a lot of issues, so she kind of got them tidier, I would say, which is a nice thing. And I got a couple of dogs from her, but shortened up the body, nice leg, a little more neck, and things like that to make them, I think, a little more attractive. I would credit her with having a lot of influence in the breed.
Once you had your own program, what were the specific breeding strategies or theories that you utilize as you establish your program?
One thing I was always willing to do is I could have dogs that were very valuable to me that I didn't necessarily show. They were possibly a bit plainer to what some people would say or think about for the breed, but they had beautiful structure, beautiful proportions, good health, good skin, and things like that. So that was really important for me to have those, and that's I think how I've done pretty well is that's what I had as my foundation bitches and the females I kept in a litter. I would always tell people just pick fronts, and his Shar-Pei a lot of times did not move very well, and so doing that generation after generation, you got some nice moving dogs. But I would say that keeping dogs that there's a place for the dogs that are the big show winners, but there's an equal place for the dogs that are the nice producers and give you some flexibility in your breeding program.
Working with a breed that's just, getting started in this country, is relatively young. Did you find yourself outcrossing a lot, or were you able to line breed or even potentially inbreed at certain times to set type?
That came later, but they were outcrosses, but then you have to remember the Shar-Pei, came to the United States in very small numbers. Everything was probably pretty closely related, even though you may not know the person. No, nothing's the same on the pedigree. They're on the other part of the country, but they were genetically very related. So you would feel like you were doing outcrosses, but there was a lot of common genetic. Later on, now many years down, many generations, you can do probably more of what thought of as traditional line breeding and things like that. And I do a lot of that.
How much does pedigree factor into your breeding decisions?
Would be personally familiar with all the dogs in the pedigree. Usually, they're dogs I've lived with or have seen at shows and so on. I also equally would be comparing or the look of the dogs and knowing the phenotype, the appearance, the strengths, and looking for, a lot of times they're pretty similar dogs in many ways, size, substance, proportion, outline, things like that. So it may not be a super close line breeding, but they have a lot of the similar characteristics that I like.
So, really looking for that type to type breeding.
Yes.
Fellow breeders, see what your breeding program has been missing with Easy Whelp modular whelping boxes. From the durable Easy Classic design to the spacious Easy Classic Tall, Easy Whelp sets a new standard for premium design and performance. Their innovative models are developed for simple setup and maximum safety, with features like integrated safety rails to protect your next generation. The smooth, hygienic surface allows for quick wipe downs to maintain a sanitary environment. The new windowed wall option provides the next level of safety, confidence, and convenience. No tools are required for assembly, which comes in handy if time is short in those critical moments. Elevate your breeding program today. Visit easywhelp.com. Walk us through your selection process. As you're looking at your dogs, how do you evaluate them to select the right individuals to move your program forward?
For litter puppies, it would be, and Shar-Pei, of course, are the cutest puppies, very, very darling puppies. So I would never make a pick like on a head or something like that. That's something you can fix real easy. Or, I mean, in a generation of breeding, or amount of wrinkle or anything like that. Those wouldn't be really considerations. What I would be looking at would be the substance. Does the dog have the right amount of bone? Is it too light boned or is it too coarse? I would be looking at proportions. Is it slightly longer than tall, compact? And then, the movement, athleticism. And the Shar-Pei have such a unique outline. You need to see some sort of top, the rising top line. Because to me, if you have a level top line, especially with a low tail set, you've kind of lost everything. So
Sure.
those would be the things I would be looking at. And probably most and what I keep or not would be the movement, also looking at, how cleanly they're coming at you. And, you can see that pretty early, if the dog's moving well or not.
So, on that topic, describe for our audience what a Good Fortune Shar-Pei looks like.
Well, hopefully, like you mentioned the word athleticism earlier, and that's something. These were all-purpose farm dogs. They have a history as a fighting dog. They're watchdogs, perimeter guard dogs, so they need to be active and an alert dog. And you want a dog that they don't have to have a big giant side gait, but they need to move efficiently, and they need to. I'm always looking for the right substance. They should be a sturdy dog, substantial, not heavy bone, and they should be a compact dog. You don't want a long dog. So I'm, looking for a dog that has that muscle, sturdiness, athleticism, and then has the rising top line. They need to be an alert dog. I mean, I hate if I'm judging Shar-Pei or something and I see a bunch of couch potatoes. So, that's not what I like. However, as I get older, I'm thinking maybe I don't need such active dogs because I mean they are so strong. But that's what I'm looking for. A dog that looks like it could do that, do its job and be a good not, these are not attack dogs, but they are good watchdogs. They bark and they're aware of what's going on and they hear things and they react to it.
How would you contrast a Good Fortune Chinese Shar-Pei with the general breed type our audience might see in the show ring today?
I think my dogs, would have usually a nice outline, the right bone, what I like, and the right proportions, not too they're our breed, like a lot of breeds, have a lot of low and long. We've got the low on leg, a little long on body. And so that's something I really don't like. And I try to avoid that at all costs. So I would think my dogs would be in the ballpark there, have nice movement, and, look like they're in pretty good physical shape. But I do see a lot, that would be one thing I would think our breed could work on is having the right substance, the right size, the right proportions, so on.
So, Grace, I'd like to learn more about your most notable dogs and what made them special. Who were the dogs that made Good Fortune?
I was talking earlier about how I have differentiated or allowed for dogs that weren't necessarily show dogs, but they were good producing dogs and good, very valuable to me. And one of those was a female I had named Good Fortune at last, and I called her Etta. And, she's one I showed a couple of times and didn't do anything. And I thought this dog is too nice to bring her to shows and not do anything. And I health tested well, and I bred her to a male. The males I've bred out to, I've seen in person and I've liked, and they have a lot of those characteristics I was talking about liking, very athletic, solid dogs. So I bred her to a stud I didn't own, call name Relic, blue ribbons aged to perfection, gold champion, really nice stud dog, very prominent in our breed. So I bred this girl, Etta, to that dog, and had a nice litter. I finished many of them, but the one I kept from that litter was Good Fortune Golden Girl. And this is 2014. And she was beautiful red brush coat. She was a fawn horse coat. We have the two different coats, and I bred her to a red brush coat, which pretty much all of my breedings are horse coat to brush coat. That works best to me. So I bred that, and I kept a red brush coat girl named Good Fortune Golden Girl. The very first show, she placed in group or something like that. And I had a good handler. I had Chris Moore handled her, and she ended up. I specialed for 1 year. That was all I had money for. So she was number one in 2016 in the breed and did a lot of winning. She's a beautiful dog. What's interesting about her is she didn't herself really produce anything. So, she was a nice show winner, and I have a granddaughter of hers that has done well, and I've kept her. But she herself, I didn't get much out of, and she was a nice type dog. So that same bitch, Etta, that I valued so much, kind of the plain Jane horse coat, I bred her to a different male, and I got a female named her call name was Hetty, and guess I can't think of her show name right now, but she was a little bit nicer than her mother as a horse coat and finished and a champion, so on. But breeding her to that, I went back to that same male Relic, Blue Rube,
Okay.
aids to perfection, with the daughter of Etta, and a little bit better, and that's where I got a lot of nice dogs. So she had the so I've got the first litter I had, 3 champions, and I had one was, Ready, which is, Good Fortune, Good and Ready too, which is he's won our national 4 times, won Orlando 4 times, won Westminster 4 times, done just at almost age 8, he just won the top 25 at our most recent show. So he's, probably the nicest dog I've produced. His litter brother, he ended up getting winner's dog at nationals
What was his registered name?
at Good Fortune Ring of Fire, Jackson. So he was a, grand champion, Jackson, and he did some winning. And then I kept the sister, whose name was JC, Good Fortune, Good Juju, and she was a bit of a plainer dog, but that was, I was going to keep her to did finish her, incorporate in the breeding program. Ready, I went ahead and sold, and he, was handled and it did really super well. And he's still doing really well. So he's one thing I really admire most about that dog is Shar-Pei don't always look as good when they get older, and he is now going on 8 and was, he won the regional, won top 25, very competitive at that age, which says a lot of nice things about the dog that he's held up that well to me. So, and I'm also a person who, if you do something that works, I'll keep going. So I repeated that breeding and got a girl who I ended up selling to Europe, and she won the world show. So it's full sister to Reddy, but she runs. So 1 year I won all the things, and repeated that litter one more time, and had a female that won best of winners at nationals and was top ranked, and another one that was select bitch. So the whole families of dogs were doing really well. Down from there, I had, I told you about the first one I had that did really well, named Sivia, Good Fortune Golden Girl, who's number one in 2016. She, I didn't really get anything out of her, but I sold a daughter of hers that was bred to that Ring of Fire, the litter brother to Reddy, and got a really nice female named that Toddy, who I won the regional a couple of years ago, and then was best of opposite at the national 2 years ago with her. So good things have come down from there. So the girl I had that was the granddaughter named Toddy, who I have here still. She is Good Fortune B&G Hot Toddy. So I bred her. She is out of the litter brother to Reddy, and I bred her to Reddy, which is Good Fortune, Good and Reddy, which is very close, but Ended up super. I got 3 dogs that just did really well at nationals. One is currently the number 1 breed dog, and she won nationals. That is Good Fortune Jump for Joy. And then her brother was also a Best in Show winner, Good Fortune Roman's Royal Revenge. And then I got Best of Winners, the regional, and an award of merit for a dog I have here named, it's Dreamies, Good Fortune, Good and Plenty. So, and then the 4th one looked really nice, but I had already lined up a pet home. So that's where that one went. But anyway, so that breeding ended up doing really well. But, with all those pretty close relatives.
You're in a position where you've had some of your greatest dogs quite recently. Where are you going from here?
Well, that's a good question. I'm so busy judging. I keep thinking I need to slow down, but it's like everything's coming up roses. So they're getting some good dogs, and I have a couple of breedings planned. In fact, I have one with using my go-to formula. I've got a fawn horse cut female, a little bit plainer. She's finished and so on, health tested, but I'm breeding her to one of the males, the one I just mentioned, Dreamy. And real excited about that. And again, they're pretty similar dogs. It's a horse coat to brush coat breeding. Health testing matches up, and excited to see what they will produce. So that's one I've got coming up.
Here at the Better Breeder Institute, we offer a full suite of digital resources and services developed to educate, support, and promote purebred conservation dog breeders. From free online tools like the Better Breeder Directory and Stud Dog Register, to our growing curriculum of courses, including Website Academy and Business Basics. We offer professional digital services, including email marketing and website design on our world-class Ultimate Breeder platform. Plus, we offer the Better Breeder Certification Program to distinguish purebred conservation breeders who breed to the standard and produce healthy, beautiful, and predictable puppies. We certify breeders who raise the bar with their ethics and breeding practices. At the Better Breeder Institute, we have the missing link to transform your purebred breeding program and achieve your highest goals. Learn more at betterbreeder.org. Grace, many people are going to look at a successful breeding program like your own, and they only see the success. What they don't get to see is the rest of the story. What have been the biggest challenges or setbacks you faced in your breeding program, and how did you overcome them?
Shar-Pei, I have some unusual illnesses associated with them, and one of them is Shar-Pei autoinflammatory disease, which is specific to the breed. And anyone who's been in Shar-Pei, that's a heartbreak that everybody's had to deal with. It can manifest itself in many ways, and of course, the saddest one is if they have kidney failure. So, my first Shar-Pei, I think early on, I was telling you about getting hooked, having a little female that I won best of breed with her from 6 to 9. She ended up, I'd bred her a couple times, and she ended up dying at 5 of kidney failure, which is, just horrifying. And so anybody who's been in the breed is really concerned with that and doing the best they can, but it's been kind of a tough disease to try to get a handle on. And it's, we have a risk factor test for that right now, but not an actual marker or anything like that. So for anybody in the breed, that would be, I think, the number one thing that is very hard to deal with now. On the other hand, I hear all the time from judges who have judged the breed forever the great gains the breed has made. I mean, great improvement, and our longevity has improved. I mean, people, I think the dogs are without a doubt living longer. The coats improved, the temperaments improved, all kinds of improvements in the breed. So there's a lot of positives that I'm very happy about. But that's not without heartache of losing dogs at a much younger age than you would have liked. As I learn more about other breeds, I know that other breeds have issues as well, but this is one near and dear to my heart, and something everybody's trying to work on. And then I've had the same heartbreak as probably other people with, litters, the outcome not what you want, for the mother of the puppies, and those are always a heartbreak too.
Grace, do you have any ideas for how to help evangelize the value of purebred dogs and conservation breeders to the general public?
One thing that always strikes me is people who want to get a rescue dog, and so that's great. I love all dogs. But, then the first thing they want to do is, well, I want to find out what they've got in it. So that, it is important to them to know what breed they come from. And the reason is to know what they might expect. So, and I know a lot of people too, when they find out you judge dogs or have dogs, you get the whole story. But they will say something like, "My family always grew up with basset hounds," and they have real affinity or something. And I think that's real important. And people need to know that that's a family value, part of the family, part of the way you grew up. And there's a place for dogs, and there's a place for purebred dogs. And my family always had this, and we like this because, and that needs to be celebrated maybe a little bit more rather than rescue.
It's a good point. So, something I've just recently found myself starting to do. In fact, it happened last week. Somebody was walking two nice Siberian Huskies, down the road side by side, and I just pulled up, rolled my window down, and I said, "It's nice to see some beautiful purebred dogs," and start complimenting the people that do understand the value. And instead of they, some circles might even be ostracized, make sure they feel celebrated. They've made a decision, whether it's the history of the breed or affinity from their own family, but
Right.
let them know you see them and you notice it.
Along those same lines, I just recently had somebody call me, and somebody they knew had a dog, a purebred dog that needed to be placed. And did I know? And of course, I have resources that could help them, and getting them information on the rescue, the breed specific club or something that might help with this breed. And so they need to know that aspect of it too, that, the people are responsible, and they've done all this testing. They're willing to take the dogs, this and that. And I posted something the other day that I had dog. I was on Facebook, and my first thought was, well, that's a good looking dog. It was from a rescue group or something. And I thought, well, that was like my dogs. Well, it was one of my dogs that got dumped in a shelter. And I drove 1,000 miles to go pick it up and bring it back. But I, shared that this is what people do if you're responsible for your dogs. And there are reasons to get a dog from somebody who will be accountable for the dog and so on.
Elevate your breeding program with Easy Whelp Solutions. Easy Whelp's innovative modular whelping boxes set a new standard for premium design and performance. Their washable, eco-friendly pads are more absorbent than the competition, keeping your whelping area clean and hygienic. And Easy Whelp Heat Combo ensures your puppies stay warm and healthy. Easy Whelp also carries a full line of whelping products, including box liners, feeding stations, whelping bundles, and video monitoring systems. Raise the bar in your breeding program. Visit easywhelp.com today. Grace, how has your vision or goals for your breeding program changed or evolved over the years?
I think as science and genetic testing has advanced, that's now incorporated. I was speaking earlier about the risk factors, and we have testing now for eye diseases that we didn't used to have. So that throws a whole nother consideration in choosing breedings and matches that you, of course, never had before. So those are things I think that I'm trying to look at a little bit further.
What does success in your breeding program mean to you today compared to when you began?
Well, as I get older, and probably will be showing less, it's important for me to try to bring some people along. I I was really pleased at our recent national in September that I had 3 people come to nationals who had my dogs, who had never really they'd never been a couple had never been to a dog show, but they had never shown at nationals or something like that, and they came and had some competitive dogs, and hopefully we'll continue on. But that, I think, people need to we need to be working a lot harder on that.
How much value do you place on judges' decisions in the ring today compared to in the past?
I tell people that, I show, and I occasionally, but for my breed, I've been in this so long that really, I know what I have, and I know what I think I have, the value of it, and so on. So I really respect judges' opinions. I like showing and so on, but at this point, my opinion on what I have or what I'm showing is more important to me. And thinking how it's going to impact my breeding program, how it stacks up, and things like that.
At this point in your breeding career, what do you view as the most significant challenge in your breed?
I would think it's like all breeds, probably the health we've been working on some of the issues for a long time, and it's improving. But I would think that like anybody, you want to be able to sell puppies, place puppies that are going to have a long, happy life. That's really important. Taking responsibility for your dogs and so on, and so that's important to me. I think the breed has come a long way in uniformity and standardization and things like that. So like all breeds, it's probably the health issue.
On the flip side, what has you optimistic about the future of your breed?
I think that we have improved the longevity. The temperaments are much better. Good pet homes are one thing. Not that many people are breeding litters, and it's easy to place pets now. I mean, so have most all of my dogs I place are with people who've already had a dog from me, or they are somebody who's had a Shar-Pei and can't find one anymore. So they're familiar with the breed, which is nice because you want to place dogs with people who already know about your breed.
What do you believe your fellow breeders should be most focused on today?
I like to see dogs that have right size, substance, proportions, balance, and things like that. So I think some people have gotten a little off on that you might look at the dogs and they are not balanced and in the right proportion. You know, judging a lot of dogs, that's you have to immediately look at a dog and determine how it fits into the standard with is it the right size? Is it the right substance? Is it the right body proportions? Things like that. And I think that's where some Shar-Pei probably fall short. I think all of them have generally pretty good breed type.
Is there a breeder you'd like to see featured on the Better Breeder Chronicles? Then go to betterbreeder.org/nominate to let us know. We are looking for master breeders, whether they are highly acclaimed or they work quietly in anonymity to move their breed forward. Better Breeder Chronicles puts those individuals on their rightful pedestal and shares their story with the purebred dog world. Nominate your most respected breeder today. Go to betterbreeder.org/nominate. Grace, to that aspiring breeder who's listening to the Good Fortune story today. If there was one thing you'd hope they'd take from your story that could help them in their own journey, what would it be?
I would recommend that they not just go looking for, the great show dog at 8 weeks or something, that they need to look for something, hopefully to start a breeding program and incorporate some soundness in their breeding. And so they would go ahead and establish a relationship with somebody and get ideas on how to do that. I mean, it's a little unrealistic, and I probably did the same thing when I started out. That you're going to look at that 8-week-old puppy, and you're like, I want a room place. Well, that's not kind of how it works. But it's hard to explain to someone who's new that you need to kind of bring them along, and hopefully they can establish a relationship with somebody to meet their goals.
And finally, after your breeding days are done, how do you want breed history to remember Good Fortune Chinese Shar-Peis?
I would like them to be able to see a dog and think that that's maybe behind them, to know the pedigree and the look and characteristics of that, what I found valuable, to know, if they want to, what they can expect out of one of my dogs, if so on, that they're going to get a dog that's moves well, is athletic and things like that I held valuable, in addition to being, I talk all this about Stokeshire, but I also have some pretty typey dogs too. So there's that in there as well.
Grace, if breeders want to learn more about your dogs and your breeding program, do you have a website or where can they go?
No, I don't too much. I have not kept up with one. Probably some old ones on the internet somewhere, but they could, contact me, or I have tons of pictures on Facebook, and or be happy to talk with them at a show or something if I run into them.
Grace, this conversation has been great. Thank you for sharing the Good Fortune story with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
That's it for this chapter of the Better Breeder Chronicles. We hope you found the Good Fortune story with Grace Fritz captivating, and that it will inspire you to pursue your highest goals in your breeding program. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. At the Better Breeder Institute, we encourage all conservation dog breeders to embrace your fellow breeders as partners and collaborators rather than competitors and rivals. With the unprecedented challenges we all face today, successful breeding programs can no longer operate on an island. Our purebred dog breeder community must come together, with everyone pulling in the same direction. This is crucial if we're going to successfully preserve and advance our beloved breeds. I'm Matt Stelter, closing the book for today. Best wishes to you and your breeding program from all of us at the Better Breeder Institute. We'll see you in the next chapter. Take care.